There's something new from our sponsor, Text Control. For decades, TX Text Control's rendering was tied to Windows functionality. But now it's a new era. TX Text Control is platform independent. You can run your .NET applications on Windows or Linux, deploy with Docker containers, Kubernetes, or host directly in Azure App Services. Seamlessly integrate document editing, signing, collaboration, and PDF processing into your ASP.NET Core and Angular applications. Are you ready to see it in action? Check out the live demo at demos.textcontrol.com. That's demos.textcontrol.com. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hanselminutes. Today I have the pleasure of chatting with Mathias Biilmann. He is the CEO of Netlify and the creator of Jamstack. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
So this is pretty cool. I don't get to talk to CEOs all the time. I don't get to talk to inventors and creators and people who are pushing the web forward. But the most important thing we have to talk about is your Commodore 64. How old were you when you got your Commodore, and was that your first computer?
That was very much my first computer, yeah. And I guess I was like 10 or 12 years old, something like that. It's actually a bit of a funny story because like I was in school and my handwriting was very bad and I had no interest in like handwriting, and teacher didn't know how to sort of like get me to write more. So at some point, like since I was expressing a lot of interest in computers, she kind of told my parents, maybe try getting him one of those like new computers and see if he starts writing on that at least. and it kind of worked out. Like it didn't help on my handwriting, but it did become a big passion.
I wonder what the thing is in 2025 that will capture the imagination of the young people the way that computers in the 80s clicked for us. Like, is it making websites? Is it just HTML? Like, because that's what the Gen X, or not the Gen X, I guess they're millennials now, like GeoCities, like when the web was weird.
Yeah.
That was what I think got kids excited. Is there anything like that now? Do you think it's AI? Do you think it's agents that's going to make the kids excited?
It's so hard to say, right? Like I have a 6 months old and a daughter that's just under 2.5. So obviously I'm wondering a lot, like what are they gonna like what are they gonna be fully into that I'm gonna be the old grumpy, like I don't get it. What is this thing? Why are they spending so much time on this on this useless things? Why are they not sitting with their computer and doing like the stuff I was doing? My guess is that obviously a lot of these AI technologies that are emerging now are really interesting as creative tools, right? Like because they lower the barrier a lot to get started doing something in the world, right? Like that's what's so exciting for me to see with a lot of these vibe coding platforms and the coding agents and so on, right? Like how the barrier that's been this journey into like, okay, you really like there's just this massive jump from being able to do nothing to be able to do something useful, right? Like that really requires going through a lot of hoops of even understanding like files and text editors and putting them somewhere, and like syntax and the idea that like one little character breaks everything if you put it wrong and so on. That kind of just goes away with these coding platforms. And I think it will be interesting to see these new generations that just takes that for granted in a way, right? Like where all of us, we it's still sort of like a new weird thing, right? Like, but for my kids, it will just be how the world is. And I wonder what that'll look like when you're sort of like fully native in it, and it's just like how you're expecting to interact with computers in the digital world.
I'm trying to get my head around it though, because it's hard to think about these things without existing in the generation that you exist in. I can't remove myself. I grew up in the Northern Hemisphere. I grew up in the Western Hemisphere. I grew up speaking English. So when I hear barriers, there's societal barriers, but like doing code didn't feel like a barrier. So then what is the barrier? Is it the attention to detail? Is it the compiler? Do we want to make it too easy?
I don't think so. Like I think doing code is more of a barrier than we realize. And obviously, it's like a weird thing because for some of us, it becomes like a weird drug almost, right? Like it's like this mystical feeling that you kind of get access to the substrate beneath the surface of computers, and you can suddenly operate at a level that's like almost like magicians, right? Like you can do things on the computer that the normal user interface don't allow you to do, and so on, right? Like, but in the grand scope of things, like the amount of people that have fluency in that level of code compared to the amount of people that have fluency in like using computers, writing spreadsheets, sharing documents, and so on, right? Like, will show that that code layer is like a very big gate to pass through, right? Like, even if we are like generous and say, like in JavaScript, there's like something like 17 million professional JavaScript developers, right? Like maybe total developers, like in the broad sense, maybe there's like 100 million if we sort of really stretch the concept of all kinds of things, right? Like, but there's 7 billion people, right? So right now I see it a little bit as like back before the printing press, right? Like where there were scribes and there were like this group of mostly priests or monks, right? Like that understood how to read and translate the sacred texts, right? Like, and in the grand scope of things, code is still a bit like that, right? Like it is this like fairly select group that can actually operate at that level. And I find it pretty fascinating that we're about to sort of remove that gate and invite like potentially billions of people in to be able to do stuff with computers that before were only for the select few, right? Like right now we have this balance where developers will build software that the rest of people can use, right? But I think we are entering into a world where it's not that I think the importance of developers go away. I think it only gets magnified, but I think we go to a world where everybody can be a developer and where software development can be a part of the skill set of every job and role in the same way that writing is today, right? Like where in a similar way before it was like a skill in itself, right? Like you could be a scribe. Today you probably can't get a job as a scribe, but you can definitely get a job as a writer. And there's probably a lot more writers sort of overall today than there was before the printing press and the sort of democratization of that. But also just about any role you have is gonna require you to know how to write, right? Like even if you don't have the title writer on your resume. And I think we're entering that journey where software development becomes sort of like goes through the same step of before it was like an exclusive things that only people that really did that did. And now it's going to become more of just like a fluid thing where, of course, you can build software.
I think human judgment is going to be more important than ever before. Like knowing what you want and intentionality, because coding is at its core expressing your intent very specifically.
Yeah.
And when I see people fail with AI or fail with vibe coding, it's when they give a vague one shot and they're disappointed with the result, and then they give up and they go, that sucks.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing for me, and that's also back to these new generations, right? Like, is that I can see that learning to build software through AI is a skill set, right? Like, people treat it as if it's not, as if the AI is now like going to do the job for them. And they're like, build me this app that does this thing. And then it fails, right? Like then that it's not going to work. And it's not like, it's just not how it works, right? Like, but you see some people, like a fun example is like we have a launch event tomorrow, Netlify Deploy. And one of our challenges in doing the launch event was that all of our front-end developers and designers and everything were so busy building the stuff that we're launching tomorrow that we didn't really have like any spare resources to do an event page. So I reached out to this guy Jacob from the vibe coding community, who's like an he's like a customer success manager, and but he's just really learned how to use bolt.new to do very cool things with it, right? Like he's really spent the time of learning how to prompt it, of looking at different examples of website and getting it to say like, hey, take the animation from this side and do a new thing with it and so on. And we asked him to build the website, and netlify.com/deploy is now like a full, like purely vibe coded by one person. And I'm very happy with the result, and it's been very effective, right? Like it's actually been like the most effective event page we've had the last 4 years or so. But the point here is that I actually wouldn't be able to go in and prompt Bolt to build that site.
Right. It didn't happen. It didn't happen as chance. Like
No.
AI is a kind of spicy autocomplete. It is next token prediction. You are rolling the dice, but you're saying this isn't just a vibe coder. This was an expert vibe coder who intentionally expressed what he wanted with Bolt and then pushed it to Netlify.
Exactly, right? Like he's built a whole new skill set, right? And I think that's sort of my view of all of these things, that on their own, they're not going to do the work or anything. But one, they do really bring on a whole new group of people to the world of building on the web and building software that were pure consumers before. And that's really cool. And two, I think they will build a new kind of skill set, right? Like what it means to develop software will shift, but it'll definitely still be a skill set, right? Like, and I think it will shift from things that are more tied to like the sort of the more binary nature of computers, right? Like of understanding programming languages and syntax and like algorithm design and all of those pieces, to what actually more humanistic elements of the software design, understanding what other people want out of software, right? Like clarity of thought, clarity in writing, systems thinking, design thinking. I think those elements will become more important for software development, and the sort of traditional, very like code oriented parts of it will become less important over time.
I find it hard to imagine like a world where I'm vibe coding a device driver or vibe coding something in the, like, I don't think that Linus is going to allow us to vibe anything into the kernel anytime soon, but I could definitely see it happening at a higher level. So it makes me wonder if vibe coding or AI is really a 4GL. They always promised us this fourth level, this fourth generation language. Because when I started in the 80s, it was C, Visual Basic, and I had to decide, are you going to be a Visual Basic programmer? They do business apps. Are you going to be a C programmer? They do low-level system stuff. And that was like the boundary. And now it feels like it's JavaScript and high-level languages that run in the browser, or it's system languages that run somewhere else. But with the Jamstack, you and Netlify, and this is a compliment, you don't have a deep stack. And by deep, I mean there's not a lot of hidden.
Yeah.
Like if somebody says, I just want to make a web page, man, then you just make an index.html, you put some JavaScript on it, you call an API. Like the stack is not deep, which I'm guessing, and this is a guess, that would make AI likely to be more successful because there's less complexity. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Yeah, totally. I think that this decoupled stack of like trying to keep the front end UI part fairly isolated from all the different backends and then building individual APIs for those backends actually lends itself really, really well to the strengths of AI and makes it really easy to start iterating with AI on your code base, whereas like larger monoliths can just sucks up way more context. There's way more things that can go wrong. It's harder to like do things like isolated deployments, right? Like I think a lot of the success of what we built was also this idea of like deploy previews and like immutable atomic deployments that you can easily roll back and so on, right? Like, and all of those characteristics also lends themselves extremely well to a flow where you're sort of like iterating with agents, seeing what they do, taking another step, right? Like I think that becomes really essential. And then I actually think that like code written by agents will start showing up in all layers of the stack, also on the systems areas and so on. But the deeper down you go, the more it will be fully guided by expert developers that understand the output of the agent and can like verify that and reason about it, and where it becomes more of like a multiplier for their ability to produce code and make output. And then the higher up the stack towards the UI you go, the more code will sort of disappear as an artifact we care about directly. And we'll care about like the specs, the prompting, the descriptions, the actual artifact of what the agent built and how it works and how like people interact with it.
Yeah, there's a ton of really interesting work happening with an intermediate step between prompting with things like spec kit, specify, where you say what you want in prose, you get a more specific prose, which is effectively a Word document you can compile. And then the specification, it becomes the new artifact. Now, tomorrow, which will be actually in the past by the time folks are listening to this podcast, Netlify Deploy will happen on October 1st. Folks can see that at netlify.com/deploy. Since that's tomorrow, why don't we pretend we're in the future? Because we are, and you can read us in to what is announced at Netlify Deploy, because you have an all new developer workflow.
Yeah, we have, right? Like, and it's interesting when I started Netlify, there was like two big similarities to now, in a way that like there was a whole new group of developers emerging. Like at the time when I first started working on Netlify in like 2013 or so, right? Like the front end developer was seen as like a pseudo developer, right? Like that would take a Photoshop file, slice it, and then hand it to a real developer that would build it and implement it. And one of our big thesis at the time was, if we give them the right tooling and we sort of like decouple the front end from the back end, they will become the mainstream web developers, and they will just build the UIs and the front ends we interact with and ship them on your own. The other thing that's sort of similar was that there was like this new workflow layer emerging. And at the time, there was like GitHub centric, like the whole Git centric workflow around branches, pull requests, and so on, right? Like, and we sort of tied those two things together and say, like, we want to make these front-end developers real developers, and we want them to work entirely, like we want to fully integrate with that workflow of Git and pull requests and the way you iterate on code there. And now we're sort of in a similar path where there's this vibe coder emerging, right? Like, and there's still this sense, oh, they're definitely not real developers, and they'll need real developers to work all the way. And there's also a new workflow layer emerging around asynchronous agents that kind of like go off and do tasks and report back to you later. So what we are launching tomorrow is two pieces. The first workflow centric one is really what we call agent runners. The idea here is to orchestrate the agents from the foundational model companies. So that's like Claude Code, Gemini CLI, and Codex CLI from OpenAI right now, that all sort of followed in the wake of Claude Code, right? Like, and I think when Anthropic launched Claude Code, it was sort of a big shift from like the coding agents that were sitting next to the code and sort of starting with tab completing and then being in the IDE, to a coding agent that sat in the CLI and was just purely, you just interact with it through prompts, but it can do anything you can do on a computer because it sits on the CLI, right? Like it can call any command. It can write code and build new commands itself and string them together and do anything, right? And I think that quickly became clear to Anthropic that what they had there was sort of like the archetype of like a real autonomous agent in the digital world that can like operate for longer stretches on its own. And when OpenAI and Google saw that, they swooped in and built their own versions. And we have more of those CLI-based agents coming out. So for Netlify, we're not going to like build our own agent and compete with that. But we saw that it became incredibly powerful to be able to like spin up agent runs in the cloud in a sandbox with those types of agents, right? Like, so you can now go into Netlify and directly from your overview, you will have like a prompt box with a selection of which agent you want to run. And then you can tell it to go do stuff against your web project. small demo I've given a couple of times. It's like on my own blog, which is like an Astro-based blog. I went in and I asked Claude Code, go and add social media sharing buttons to the blog posts. I want like Twitter and Blue Sky and LinkedIn and Hacker News. And kicks off a run. It runs in a sandbox fully autonomously and like YOLO mode, right? Like it can just go do all the work it wants. Because we know this is a web project and we know how to build it and deploy it, we can spin up like the dev server for the project meanwhile and give Claude access to the logs so it can see if it breaks things or not. We can have it validate at the end of the run that the build still works and so on.
So are you making all of Netlify a tool or an MCP server?
No, we're kind of like spinning up a Firecracker-based VM and putting all the right context in place and spinning up the dev server, but like we're kind of orchestrating the agent run. It actually doesn't have access right now by default to our MCP server. We just put the right context in place in the prompt so it knows what kind of project it's working. We kind of do the context engineering for you to make it more successful. And then the result of every run is a deploy preview. Just like in the Git-centric world, the result of any pull request is a deploy preview, right? Like in this world, the result of any agent run is a deploy preview, because like the thesis is that what you really care about is mainly like what did it build and does it work, right? Like, and of course you can go also look at the diff and see what code it wrote and so on, right? Like, but you immediately get that unique URL where you can go see what did the agent build. And then you can do follow-up runs, right? Like you can do threads and keep iterating on it. And then if your project is linked to GitHub, you can then open a pull request from Netlify, right? Like once, like, because I think the other flow is often a little weird, right? Like the other flow where you spin up an agent and then the result is a pull request in GitHub is kind of weird because you don't even like it's not deterministic, right? Like, so you don't really know, did it actually do something that's like worthwhile of a pull request, right? Like it might have done a completely weird thing, and now you have sort of like a pull request that's like that you don't like, right? Like, so in this world, you iterate with the agent with deployments as the artifact, and once you're happy, you can open a pull request, and that turns into our normal deploy preview process, and you can then keep pushing back to the pull request if you want, and then take it live. So it's sort of really integrated into this overall workflow with sandboxing, unique deployments, and even tied into other places of our workflow, right? Like, so one of the things we launched a while ago is a little button called "Why Did It Fail?", where when you open a pull request in GitHub and the build runs on Netlify, but it fails for some reason, that was like sort of a typical path of friction, right? Like now you typically have to go like debug locally, look at the lines, like figure out what is wrong. We now have this little button that you hit. It takes like the error messages and the code context, send it to an LLM and give you a diagnosis of like, why did it fail? But now it also has a button saying, fix it with an agent, that just take that diagnosis and everything and kicks off an agent run that goes to work, implements the fix, and give you an option of saying, okay, this actually worked. I'll push it back to the pull request and get moving. And the more you start like having this available, the more it becomes like just a really powerful workflow, but also a really inclusive workflow, right? Like one of the things that we've seen is that in our production code bases, people that were stakeholders before are starting to be collaborators now, right? Like product managers, product designers, support engineers, all kind of people are now being able to just like jump into the same way and open an agent run to actually like see if it works. And if it does, well, then they could just self-serve on a whole issue, push it to GitHub and have the dev team take over and integrate, right? Like, and I think that's kind of part of our vision for this, right? Like to see how can we bring more of the extended team into this development workflow? How can we help them prototype directly within the actual like code bases of the app? How can we help them go directly and work on things that that they could potentially just ship all on their own.
Yeah.
And internally at Netlify, we're really seeing that now, right? Like we're really seeing PMs taking things to production, CEOs taking
No,
things
I
to
think that's
production.
great. That's actually a more compelling argument than I've heard in a long time, because I think all of these conversations around vibe coding have been developers concerned about their jobs, developers concerned about what the developer experience is going to be like. But you're talking about collective ownership,
Yeah.
the full stack being as simple as possible.
Yeah.
But you're also making this is an analogy, but you're making the Lego pieces just the right size.
Yeah.
Like Firecracker is lighter weight than Docker. It spins up in 100 milliseconds. It gets the thing done.
Yeah.
You are get in, get out. So you're making that that inner loop, that developer's loop, as tight and as small as possible, and then everyone participates.
Totally. That's really the goal, right? Like, and the same with this idea of the deployment, right? Like you run an agent run, you immediately have like a deployment URL you can share with others and say, hey, does this look right?
Hey friends, this is Scott. I'm going to take a moment in the middle here and introduce you to one of our new sponsors, Postman Flows. They let you orchestrate APIs, logic, and data visually. I've been chatting with Roderick. Roderick, what has been the aha moment for you when you were building agents with Postman Flows?
The first thing that I've noticed is that when you connect an API to an AI, then it really transforms what you can do and the capabilities that the large language model can do for you. So the aha moment for me was that very first connection and unlocking the ability of taking a AI, which was essentially transactional with respect to text in, text out, and changing it into something that was outcome driven, text in, actions out. And the way to do that was through APIs, and using all of the Postman APIs that are on the network today, over 100,000 plus, was really the thing that I wanted to sort of just drive more and more of.
Text in, actions out. Text in, actions out. I love it. Postman Flows. It's a powerful tool for creating and running AI agents and API automations. You can check them out at postman.com/Hanselminutes. I've always loved that part of continued. Like there's so many companies in 2025 that barely have a working build server. So like if you're listening and you don't have a build server, like get it together. But the power of being able to go into a pull request and then click on a link and see a container with a running tiny version of that pull request, and then a product manager can comment on it directly. Is it's fantastic. And right now, today, it's hard. It sounds like it's not going to be hard for very long.
No, and I think again that ties back to the workflow, right? Like that right now, the part all of that is orchestrated around is the pull request, but the pull request typically is still a place where a lot of people will never go into, right? Like so, we are trying to pull it away from the code itself.
Well, they'll be in issues. The product manager goes to issues. They don't go to pull requests.
Totally, right? Like so we're trying to build this like prompt review flow on our end where it's like one step separated from the code and then push back into the pull request once it's ready, right? Like, and once it's ready to bring it there. So it's going to be really interesting to roll out tomorrow. And there's like a lot of work we want to keep doing on that. Like we want to bring it into our Slack app so you can like directly interact with it from there, with more integrations planned. We think we can do a lot more in terms of automatically set up like the right MCP servers for like the tools you're working on and so on, and get all of that working, because we often sit in that space where you both have your project configured, but also all of the like API keys for the different CMSs or APIs or whatever like you're connecting to, right? Like, so we sit in an interesting place to make it much simpler for the agents to like pull in the right information and have the right context, and really just accelerate how teams build together.
I've always been a CLI person, and I've always loved the terminal. I think back to the Commodore 64, the terminal's where it's at. I am surprised how quickly in 2025 it took me to basically move out of the editor. The last two projects that I moved into production, I don't think I ever went into an editor. It was done entirely in either Claude or right now I'm using the GitHub Copilot CLI. And the way that everyone, Codex, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, just said, okay, this is the UI. we're all just going to do Claude. There's going to be a box. This is how it's going to go. Everyone's just deciding what the hotkeys are going to be. So Control R is expand everywhere. We've already decided. Everyone's kind of getting out of the way. There's other cool standards, and Netlify is the first one I've seen do this. If you go to docs.netlify.com/LLMs.text, there's actually a markup language, effectively like robots.txt, except for LLMs, which is a way for Netlify, the platform, to say, here's my docs.
Yeah.
So it's a standard discoverable thing. I'd love to see, Azure and AWS have this be a standard, because why should we be Googling from the command line for our docs?
Yeah.
The docs should be presented to the LLM in an LLM-friendly way. I really thought that was very thoughtful of Netlify to do that.
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the year, I coined this term called AX, or agent experience. And it came out of just like a conversation with a principal engineer now, and where it just suddenly emerged. We have to think about the experience of the agent. But I coined it also to really rally the team around like the way we make Netlify a really great developer platform for this new era is to have a really great agent experience where it's really simple for agents to understand how to use our platform, how to approach our docs, how to get access to deploying, how to orchestrate agents, how to make sure our CLI tool works really well with agents, how to make sure our MCP is great for agents, and so on, right? Like, and there's been a lot of like efforts on the docs around that, same around like every page having like view plain text version or copy to markdown and so on. And I actually did an agent run yesterday, just as an example. There was a Twitter thread around like Bond.js coming up with this idea that they would do content negotiation. So if Claude Code does a fetch request to their docs, Claude Code actually doesn't request text-HTML. It requests application JSON or text plain. So Bond's docs now detects that and returns markdown when that's the case, instead of returning HTML, right? Like, which saves a lot of tokens for the models.
As if Claude is its own user agent, and it's saying, this browser, the Claude CLI, wants things a certain way. We'll send it to it that way.
Exactly, nice. Right? Like, and it just so I made a agent run, right? Like, I went into Netlify and I told, in this case, Claude Code, go add an edge function to our docs side that looks at the accept header from any client. And if that accept header prefers text plain over HTML, we should send the markdown version and send the right vary headers to make sure that like caching works and everything. And then just kicked it off. And like 5 minutes after, I could open a pull request to our doc side after reviewing it. And I think right now we have the event going live tomorrow, so no one's shipping anything else right now. But like end of the week, we'll probably roll this pull request out, and we'll have the same functionality for our docs, because it makes sense, right? Like, just make it easier for these agents to request the information in a way that's really friendly to the LLMs.
That's really cool. Well, I love that you're making it work on all the LLMs, that you're making it work on all the CLIs, that you're not building your own CLI, but instead you're building toys for us to play with our agents and our LLMs.
Exactly.
You can learn all about this at netlify.com. The event is netlify.com/deploy, and you can push your ideas to the web. Thank you so much, Mathias Biilmann, for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
This has been another episode of Hanselminutes, and we'll see you again next week.